Hello, and welcome to yet another geek show where your seat also doubles as a flotation device. I'm your host, Alex Ecker.
I'm your host, Dalton Munnell.
I'm your host, Josh Keir.
So, guys, kicking off the episode, how you guys doing today?
Oh, good enough, Alex, I guess. I'm here, so...
Damn it, you're here.
I guess I was doing better before now.
Wow, okay. I was about to say I'm doing wonderfully because I'm spending some time with my good friends doing a podcast, but my attitude is apparently different than Dalton's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said the quiet part out loud again.
Yeah,
it's a habit.
We all struggle with that sometimes.
Well, I'm doing great because I didn't pee myself when I woke up this morning.
Oh, well, I have that going for me, too.
Yeah, that's a gold star I put on my wall almost daily.
I keep track of it on a little calendar.
Yeah. If I get enough gold stars, my parents give me an allowance.
Really? My dad usually takes me to McDonald's.
Ooh, that's nice.
My dad doesn't beat me if I'm successful.
Whew, okay, now we're going there.
Oh, that got dark way too quickly, guys.
All right, I'm sorry. Let's move past that bit.
Okay, sure.
So this weekend, Josh and I were together at a gathering for the first time since starting to record this show, and we ran into an interesting problem we did not foresee.
The problem was we couldn't talk about anything that we were doing because then we'd have nothing to talk about on the show.
Oh, see, I wasn't aware that you guys were hanging out.
Yeah, well, that's because you weren't invited.
I know. I have that pretty frequently as a problem in my life.
But yeah, I wanted to walk up to you and be like, "Hey, Dalton, so what are you up to this week?" And then I realized that you could not really tell me much because if you did, we wouldn't be able to talk about it right now.
Well, we could still have a show, but we'd have to pretend we were having that conversation for the first time.
Right.
I also wanted to approach you and ask, so Josh, what have you been playing? But I know damn well what you've been playing.
Yeah, so I guess that means that I'll start. I mean, obviously, I've been playing a lot of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Damn it. Don't spoil anything in here right
I will
now.
not spoil anything. I will say that I'm about 10 hours in. I guess I haven't been playing a lot, but I've been enjoying it so far. I have a lot of opinions. Some are good and some are less than good, but you know, that's the mixed bag you just kind of get with Kingdom Hearts generally. I've actually also been playing a non-Kingdom Hearts game. I'll stop so you all can gasp. There we go. This is one actually that I've been looking forward to for a really long time, so I was really excited it came out. So this indie turn-based strategy game called Wargroove came out last Friday. If any of you are familiar with this, or if you're not, it's developed by Chucklefish Games, which I think are the people that did Starbound and produced Stardew Valley. And it's kind of a spiritual successor to the Advance Wars games on the Game Boy Advance, but with a more like medieval like style as opposed to Advance Wars' like infantry and tanks warfare. You've got swordsmen and catapults and things like that. Are you guys familiar with the Advance Wars series at all?
I'm not, and I've heard you have this conversation with someone before.
Yeah, I've been really excited about this. It's been in development for a few years, and they just, I think 2 weeks ago, just kind of announced the release date out of nowhere. I've been playing this a lot over the weekend. It's actually eaten up a lot of time that I thought was going to go into Kingdom Hearts, which is why I'm not as far along as I thought I'd be by this time. It's phenomenal. So Chucklefish, Wargroove.
Which was my nickname in high school.
Well, you should take
it's my nickname now
because they've probably got some money now.
Sweet.
Wargroove, and I guess by extension, Advance Wars. It's a turn-based grid-based strategy game where you'll produce units, move them around the map, try to capture territory that brings in income that lets you then spend more money on like bigger and better units. In Advance Wars, you picked a commanding officer that was just kind of like this invisible presence that would passively like adjust the stats of some of your units. So like one of the COs, his specialty was direct combat, so your things like your tanks would be stronger. And he had a counterpart who specialized in indirect combat, where his artillery hit a little bit harder and had extra attack range. There were people that were like their units were cheaper but less effective. Some COs, they would be like more expensive and better. Wargroove's a little different in that your commander is actually a unit that you have on the battlefield, and instead of like adding passive abilities to your units, you have they call it a groove in the game, but each commander has a specific power that you charge up over the course of the battle by having your commander participate in combat. But if your commander dies, you lose the game immediately. So it's like a risk reward of trying to bring your commander to have them see action, because they're a really powerful unit, and your powers are really good too. But also, if you get cut off at the wrong point, you could just lose right away. Advanced Wars had powers based on your CO as well, but the CO was not a unit, so this is an additional victory condition that they added in Wargroove over just capturing your opponent's headquarters or destroying all of their units. I've mostly just been playing through the single-player campaign, which has been a lot of fun so far. It's pretty difficult, but the difficulty is adjustable. I've been on the standard difficulty the whole time, and I've had to restart a few missions a couple times to get a feel for them. But overall, I could talk about this game for a long time. I'm loving it. If you guys are strategy fans at all, I would highly recommend picking this up. I'm playing it on the Switch. I know it's out on Steam. I think it's on PS4 as well. And the nice thing is that the multiplayer is cross-compatible between versions. I haven't touched the multiplayer at all, but I know that that's a thing that you can do, which I really enjoy.
Let me tell you, I picked up pretty quickly there that you were talking about a strategy game, and it immediately scared the ever-living hell out of me.
Not your bag, Dalton?
I would love to love strategy games, but I am just too dumb. Maybe not dumb. Maybe the word is impatient, or, I don't know if this game is maybe quicker to pick up on than other strategy games, but any attempts I've put in to pick up on, like, let's say something like Civ or Age of Empires, it's just too much an uphill battle for me.
Oh, mechanically, the game is very simple. There's not it's one of those easy to learn, hard to master games where you could learn everything you need to know about like how to play the game in 20 minutes. There's not a whole lot going on besides, like, I don't know. I've never played Civ. I'm not really big into the empire management strategy games like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you'd be comfortable playing maybe like a slightly more complicated version of chess, that's about the level of complexity you'd get on Wargroove.
That sounds reasonable. You know what? I've played one strategy game ever. I think it qualifies as a strategy game that I did decent at and had a blast at. And that was, let's see if you guys are familiar, Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Kingdom, I think was the name.
You talking about Falsebound Kingdom?
Right? Falsebound Kingdom. There we go.
Yeah.
That's the one.
That game was wonky, man.
That was my jam. Was it?
Well, it's not your typical Yu-Gi-Oh game, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's also not a game I've braved going back to, but my memories of it are good.
I have that problem quite frequently where I'm like, oh, this game was really awesome. And then you go back and play it and it's like, oh, no. Like, this is awful.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that I remember that game, and I remember it being weird, and I don't remember how to play it at all. or like how it even played. I just remember that it was kind of like you were summoning your monsters and moving them around a grid. Mm-hmm. Maybe kind of like that one season or the arc where they played that game with the dice.
There were games, I believe, that were based on that dice game, but this one
Dungeon Dice Monsters, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, this particular game wasn't really based on those, but my vague little memory of it, I feel like it qualified as a strategy game. But yeah, I likewise do not remember enough to actually describe the gameplay. Maybe that's a memory I'll leave untarnished.
That's probably a safe bet.
Probably the case for many Yu-Gi-Oh games, really.
Oh, wow.
Although one day, 10 years from now on this podcast, someone's going to say, well, this week I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom, and it's the best game I've ever played, guys.
Oh, man.
Geez. Okay. Alex, we played a game together.
Yes, we did.
We recorded a Let's Play. That's a thing. We're going to start doing that. Find our YouTube channel. We're going to upload those at Yet Another Geek Show. And they'll be uploaded under the title, Yet Another Let's Play. Hello, Editor Dalton from the future here. That information was incorrect. You can find everything we do on YouTube at the broccolibomberstudios channel. Thank you. We played Divekick. Alex, tell the people about it.
Okay, well, the instructions are a little complicated on this game, okay? I will give you step one. First, you dive. Second step, you kick.
And that's all we needed.
You're very welcome. No, this game is super fun. It's got it really plays on the I'm a unique character, but also incredibly generic style.
Everyone's a trope.
Yes, thank you.
To humorous effect.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not unintentional.
No, absolutely not. It's all very comedic. My favorite character probably has to be Uncle Sensei. Now, the game is super simple and easy. It's a great game to pick up with anybody, because all you really need to know is how to use two different buttons in the game, because one's jump and the other one's kick. Sorry, one is dive, the other one is kick. So you get into the game and you're asked to select your character, which sure enough they're all really cool because they all have like different styles of kick and different heights of dive.
Yeah, you would think they couldn't make a big difference between play styles with this mechanic.
Right.
But everyone feels pretty significantly different.
Yeah, absolutely. Their trajectory is the biggest part. And knowing what character does like what angle of a kick or speed or whatever is a really good thing to know while playing this game. So if you're experiencing this game, get your like friend that doesn't play video games very often and just whoop his ass. But no, then after you select your character, they give you an option to select your bling, which I don't think does anything except the one item that you get to pick does like a sudden death mode. So like it'll be like you get 5 rounds total to like first to 5 wins, and I think the one gives your opponent 4 wins, which
so the only bling that actually does something at that menu works completely against you.
Yeah.
And everything else is just there for humor.
Exactly. And then
it's a fun thing to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Which I guess we just ruined for everyone.
Well, if they're wanting to play with somebody that's never heard this before, that'd be fantastic. Play them in Divekick and then show them our podcast, please. That would be awesome. But then the final thing is you get to select their duds, which is just a different character color skin of each individual character. But we had some pretty hilarious results with our play. Like,
I mean, ultimately, there's not a whole lot to say about it, but it's a great party game.
Absolutely. It's a good icebreaker for like if you're having a party and you know everyone there is super nerdy, but they don't like to talk to people because they're introverted and awkward. Throw them this game, and I'm guaranteeing you will make best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super easy to just throw at anybody. Here's the 2-button controls. And I mean, literally 2 buttons. There's not even like directional movement, literally 2 buttons. And there's humor all over the place between the character designs and dialogue and loading screen tips and things going on in the background of the stages. So yeah, I can recommend it for all that. But it also actually does have a story mode. Alex, I don't know if you've ever bothered to play through it.
I have. I was going to get to that point. There are 2 different characters in this game, and their names are Dive and Kick separately. I think they're supposed to be either best friends or related somehow. I can't remember how, but they're taught by like Uncle Sensei, who teaches them how to dive and kick, and that's how their story works. Like the one's like good at sports, the other one's good at math, so that's how he's good at being a dive kicker. It's really funny stories. Some of them are just ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous. Like I don't know if you noticed this, Dalton, but they had a couple of video games crossover into it, like
the Saints Row guy,
Johnny Gat, man. You don't disrespect Johnny Gat. I don't know about you guys, but I've played at least some of the Saints Row games and I loved them.
Yeah, not at all.
Not familiar with the franchise.
You need to.
I mean, I know of the franchise. I just never played a game.
They make fun of GTA, basically. That's how I look at them, and I love it.
It's super ridiculous GTA, basically. I think that's about all there is to say about Divekick. So I'll go ahead and jump into the only other game I played this week. Guys, I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to start obligating myself every week to talk about a VR game.
Gasp.
I haven't been playing a lot of VR lately just because I'm too lazy, and I want this to force me to get through my backlog. And not just that, but to talk about games that I've already completed just because, I don't know, I like VR and it's cool and I want more attention to go to these things.
Sure. Yeah. That's
so
fair.
Even the ones that aren't so great. So this week I'm going to start with Holopoint. Alex, have I made you play Holopoint?
Yes. And I love and hate it.
That is fair enough. So the idea of Holopoint is it is one of many VR archery games. And this one, it takes place in a dojo where there's this hologram technology all over the dojo, creating targets for you to shoot at. So there's no real physical enemies. You're shooting at holograms that are either these box-shaped targets, or sometimes they're holograms of enemies, approaching you with swords. And what's kind of unique to this game is that a lot of archery-based VR games have you kind of face forward, and it's maybe a, just protect this door
like
kind
a tower
of game.
defense kind of game.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. But this one has you playing in 360 degrees and really taking advantage of your room space. It does make the cord extremely inconvenient. And so I actually only have a couple hours of playtime here because I vowed a long time ago I wasn't going to touch it until I could afford to go wireless. Yeah. That said, it's still worth putting up with the wire. And it's, I guess the other thing that makes it kind of different besides the 360 degrees is the way it keeps you constantly moving fast. Because what happens is as soon as you shoot the target, it immediately explodes and shoots right back at you. And if you don't move while you're shooting, it will hit you. But at the same time, the moment you hit it, another target has spawned. And if you don't spot that target and hit it fast enough, it will explode on its own and shoot you, and you will fail to dodge it. So it's just this weird effect where you shoot at them faster to make sure you're hitting them before they explode on their own, but that causes the next target to spawn even faster. And then once the game starts spawning actual enemies walking towards you, like the speed is even more important. You've got to manage to hit them before they get to you, but the block-shaped targets are still spawning at the same time. That said, it is, one of many VR wave shooters, so it's not substantial on content. I'm sure there's more than I realize there is, just because it's actually really hard, and, I haven't managed to get past... let's see, I want to say the furthest I've made it is wave 11. I think once you get through maybe 25 of them, you unlock another area besides the dojo. But point being, it's an arcade style game. You're not going to get a ton of gameplay out of it. It's really just a nice kind of workout experience, which is unfortunately what I'm going to say about a lot of VR games. That said, as much as I actually really do enjoy this game, I can't recommend it. Not because it's not good, but because they just completely invalidated it with a new game called Holopoint Chronicle, which I will probably talk about next week.
See, I wasn't aware that they were... I mean, I know VR games have been coming out left and right, but I didn't realize that Holopoint had sort of a sequel. Is it a sequel? Or is it like a...
I don't want to call it a sequel because there's not a meaningful story.
Right. That's the thing. Like,
there's not a story at all. I mean, it's an arcade wave shooter.
Okay, so...
So maybe follow-up is the right word.
Is this one going to be introducing a story by chance, or is this just going to be a kind of the same deal, just polished?
It's like an iteration on the mechanics, right?
Right. Well, I played it for maybe 20 minutes yesterday, so I'm not super qualified to talk about it. I'll have more to say about it next week. Mm-hmm. But from what I could tell, as far as I got, it's just a really serious polishing on the mechanics.
I see. Okay.
But I played far enough immediately to get to see a second environment on my first shot. So it seems like there's going to be more variety and like the music actually getting changed up between waves and more types of targets and whatnot. But yeah, right this second, that's all I can really say about the follow-up. It's enough that I can't recommend the original game anymore. Honestly, the original game should kind of be pulled from the store and only be given free with the follow-up Holopoint Chronicle.
Yeah, I could see that being very fair.
I believe they're still listed at the same price, and it's kind of dishonest. The game's well known enough that someone buying a new headset might buy it and not realize there's no reason to do so anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's a little frustrating to see some game developers who do that kind of thing where they'll make a 2.0 of something and expect you to pay the same price as the first game and not discount the first game or give it away as free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say about that one. Oh boy, guys, I did not watch a single movie this last week.
That's actually a shocker from you.
Yeah, you're always...
How did I pull that off?
You're always talking about these movies that you're like, dude, this movie's so good. This movie's so good. You should watch it. We could talk about it. I came prepared for this one, guys.
Oh, wait. Okay, Alex, hold that thought. I see where you're going with that. Good save. I'm usually the one providing way too much content here and potentially rushing you guys through your stuff because I watch too much. But Alex, before you get to Glass, which you just saw, I guess.
Thanks for spoiling
even though I watched them like a month ago, we should talk about Unbreakable and Split, huh?
Well, I was going to get to that. I just kind of want to give like a quick rundown of the movies, if that would be okay with you guys.
Sure. I haven't seen any of them, so I have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, I think we should go one by one and avoid super spoiling them.
Oh, of course.
I think we can start with Unbreakable.
Yeah, that was my plan. I was going to go through them.
All right, so let's start there. Unbreakable.
Okay, first thing first, I want to point out to people who haven't been
I'm
familiar.
the realist.
Fuck you, man. Just genuinely, fuck you.
See, I keep going into the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt theme song. Keep saying Unbreakable, I'm going, they alive, damn it.
It's a miracle.
But I know it's not that. It's making me sad.
Right? Well, we'll talk about Kimmy Schmidt probably a little later, Josh, because I love that show. Absolutely do. I'm not finished with whatever's currently out, though. But
I've only seen the first season. I need to catch up. Sorry, I'm sidetracking us. Continue.
Oh, no, you're okay. You're okay. Okay, so the movie starts off with Bruce Willy. He's on a train, and that train derails, guys. It explodes and fucking does this flippy floppy thing, and everyone dies. You
truly paint with words.
Thank you. I have been told I have a face for radio. So anyways, everyone dies on this train accident, okay? And Bruce Willy is the only survivor, which then he begins to question things about his life. There's a particular character whose name is Elijah, who contacts
Sammy Jackson.
yes, the man himself, the legend. He contacts
Sammy.
So Samuel L. Jackson comes in, sort of. He leaves like a note on his car and but he meets with Bruce Willis and his son and tells him that what happened to him wasn't a miracle. It's that he's superhuman. And the entire movie kind of goes on about Bruce Willis trying to fight believing this superstitious thing that he's been told about himself. And if you watch the movie, you'll kind of understand where that goes. All right.
I mean, that's the basic gist of it. I think we want to avoid giving too much of a line by line and making it not worth watching later. But
I should point out one other thing about Samuel L. Jackson's character, Elijah.
Okay.
He looks at Bruce Willis as this unbreakable hero, but it's also because Samuel L. Jackson's character is diagnosed with this bone disease that makes his bones like glass. So kids in high school used to pick on him and they called him Mr. Glass. And that's where I'm going to leave that right there. Okay.
Right. And that's based on a real illness that if I realized we were going to talk about this, I would have looked up the word for it. But it's a real illness that Sammy's character suffers from. And the idea is to look at it as a spectrum. He's stuck on this side of a spectrum of being super fragile. Surely there must be somebody on the other end of that.
Right.
And I guess the unique, distinct thing about this movie is that despite a superpowered character, it's nothing like a superhero movie.
Right.
It's not. There's no combat. There's no. I don't know if I want to say no villain, but there's no adversary to have
it's a
explosions with and anything like that. It's simply a really realistic picture of a man coming to grips with being superpowered. And it's not shot like a superhero movie. Right. It doesn't feel like one. These feel like real people. I love my superhero movies, don't get me wrong, but it feels like you're in a room watching someone really come to grips with this. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the appeal for me. Sammy Jackson in this movie is honestly the only thing that feels a little bit unreal. Like
absolutely.
He just dresses in a peculiar way, has a peculiar haircut, a peculiar way of talking, but it's a thing that it makes sense when you're watching it because
absolutely.
This is a character that loves comic books, and he's kind of seeing it through that light. Like, to him, he's watching these stories of heroes come alive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
So that character is kind of ridiculous on purpose. And so that's the only exception to this ridiculously grounded take.
Yeah.
That said, just for the sheer uniqueness, like, this is up there for favorite superhero movies for me.
Yeah. This is probably my favorite non-Marvel superhero movie.
I hear people talk about superhero movies having a formula, and I always kind of shrug it off because I'm like, well, yeah, it has to be there to some extent. How do we make superhero stories without it being about a hero coming to grips with their powers and then finding an adversary and then whooping that adversary's ass at the end? Like, how do you really avoid all that in a superpower story?
You call M. Night Shyamalan.
This one just said, screw it, no fights. It's not about, fighting a villain. You could argue that it's just the origin story and first act of a fuller story, and maybe it doesn't get to those tropes because it's intentionally a bit unfinished.
Right, which leads us into the second movie, Split.
Which, by the way, Alex, I don't know if you realize this. This is common knowledge now, and so there's no harm in spoiling it. But I don't know if you're aware, since you just watched Split, that when Split released, people did not know it was a follow-up to Unbreakable.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing, too. It's not until,
So I hope you were watching it with that in mind, that when you were watching it, you knew that other people watching it didn't know that superpowers were a thing in this universe.
See, it's really funny because I didn't know that until you recommended watching Unbreakable and then Split because you were going to see Glass. I didn't realize that Split was not its own standalone movie, which surprised the hell out of me, and especially because it's like a superhero movie. Well, Split isn't, but it's a superhero series. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now, going into Split, it's rather abrupt. in the very beginning of the movie. Like straight up, like if you watched the trailer for the movie back when it came out, that's like the entire start of the movie.
Oh, yeah. Nearly everything in it is from
Yeah, just from the beginning.
very early in the movie. That said, I walked into the movie totally blind. I didn't know a thing about the plot. I said one day I want to go see a movie, and I opened up Rotten Tomatoes and I saw a percent somewhere in the 90s and said, all right, fine, let's go see that. James McAvoy's in it and it has a 90 something. I'm sure it'll be worth it.
Right.
And I walked in knowing nothing, and I am so glad I did. And I've watched this over and over again since.
Yeah. And like when I was watching Unbreakable with my wife, she had seen Split, but not Unbreakable. And she said that watching Unbreakable after watching Split filled a lot of the gaps for her in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
it explains, it gives extra significance to a couple scenes.
oh, absolutely it does. Not going into those in particular, but after seeing Split, you know, it filled in those gaps for me with Unbreakable. It was just really kind of funny.
Yeah.
Now, Split, if you guys are unaware, it's a movie that could actually be on its own.
Absolutely. I mean, you cut out the very last scene reveal.
Yeah.
And it's totally its own movie, just fine.
Certainly, yeah.
I mean, it was the one I saw first, and it's not a problem at all. It barely touches on Unbreakable in any important way. You'd have to be watching closely for it.
Yeah, absolutely, you do. But the movie starts off there. I believe it was like a teenage party. Basically, there's a lonely girl at school, and she was invited because you can't make her not feel included, that kind of mentality. And the family that invited her also offered her a ride home because she didn't have a way home. So they all get in the car. They're waiting for the one girl's dad. And he goes to the back of the car, puts some stuff in the trunk from the party. And that's pretty much the last time you see him because James McAvoy's character comes in. I don't know if he kills him or drugs him, but either way, you don't see the dad ever again. And he sits in the car, just sits there for like a few seconds, and then out of nowhere pulls out this, I'm guessing it'd probably have to be chloroform, but he just like sprays all the girls in the face with it. They all pass out. They wake up in a locked room that is just a few beds and a bathroom, and they have no idea what's going on. And then as the plot, you know, continues into the movie, you realize that this character that they're with, it's a controversial medical condition from what the movie has told us. I've never really personally looked into it, but the character,
the correct term is
DID.
Dissociative identity disorder, correct?
Yeah, that's where I was going. Is it's called dissociative identity disorder.
Similar to Unbreakable in that it's, let's take this real world phenomenon and see what supernatural we can pull out of the idea.
Right, absolutely. And the movie is basically his origin story. And you get to see different sides of his character, and you really, without giving much away,
and that's all opening scene setup, by the way. None of that is spoiler. That's the first 5 minutes of the movie. That's what the trailer establishes.
Yeah.
The idea here is to see what kind of horror we can pull out of the idea of being captured by a person suffering this disorder. The idea that
the fear that your captor doesn't even
not knowing which personality is about to be talking to you, or if you're making progress with one, like you think you're getting along and you might be safe for the moment, like you don't know that another more dangerous personality isn't about to jump out.
Right. Now, without spoiling the ending, we did talk about the final scene, and this is the only thing that puts the movies together. Okay. I'm going to skip just ahead until that final scene. Basically, someone brings up Mr. Glass or Samuel L. Jackson.
Thought it was Sammy.
Yeah. So again, not really a spoiler, because if you know the movie Glass exists, well, now you know that these movies are connected.
Yes.
But if you were watching Split in the theater 2 years ago, you didn't know that, and that really recontextualized some things in the movie for you. It made you, only in that moment did you start to view it as a supervillain origin story instead of just kind of another thriller.
Right. I'm trying really hard not to be like, oh, this is blah, 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 blah. And then like, shit, I just ruined the first movie. So that's why I'm pausing a lot.
Well, yeah, it's I'm being a bit liberal here because the very existence of a trailer for Glass tells everyone.
Split's in it, yeah.
You know, the reveal there.
Unless you're like me and you don't watch movie
about
trailers.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But in talking about this movie, you have to talk about performances because it rides completely on those.
McAvoy was fantastic in Split.
Yeah, well, him most importantly, but also Anya Taylor-Joy, who must have an agreement with her agent that she will play in nothing but horror and thriller movies, apparently.
Right.
Because I've seen her in maybe 4 or 5 movies, and they are all of the horror variety.
Oh, I see.
Finally, this isn't a recent revelation, but finally she gets cast in a superhero movie role, that being the New Mutants from Fox.
You mean
guess what? It's the first horror superhero movie.
Oh my God. That's really funny.
Yeah. So
now,
but go ahead.
I just want to. Can we touch base on Glass with something real quick?
Well, no. Let's stick in order. We're just taking an extra minute to praise these performances here before we move on. Anya Taylor-Joy, she has those roles rightfully, so I guess that's all I can say about it is that I don't even think her character is consistently similar, so I don't want to call her a one-trick pony. I don't know why it is that she's constantly stuck in these roles, but she's great every time, and she holds her own against McAvoy, which is phenomenal, because McAvoy's role, more importantly here, should have been fucking Oscar-worthy.
Yes.
That should have been nominated, that should have won. It is ridiculous and incredible,
etc.
Watching him play multiple characters within a single shot, just watching his identity completely change with a slightly moved facial expression.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Watching him jump, in one shot from the personality of a small child to kind of a metrosexual fashion expert to that of his woman identity. The sassy diabetic. Yeah. Just so seemingly effortlessly. And I've heard mixed things about Glass, but I'm going to get around to watching it for him alone, because if nothing else works for me, that absolutely should. He is incredible consistently.
Man, having not seen any of these movies, I have no idea what the fuck you guys are talking about, but it sounds interesting. I haven't seen a Shyamalan movie since Signs.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure these and Signs and what's that other Bruce Willis one? The Sixth Sense are the only Shyamalan movies I've seen. That said, apparently I've been seeing the good ones because I'm aware of his inconsistent track record.
Is Signs considered one of the good ones? Because I'm going to have a major problem with that.
I actually don't know about that one.
I haven't watched it in years, but
being careful not to go too far off topic, I would have considered it okay.
Yeah.
When I saw it. Solid 3 stars out of 5.
Yeah. But
that said, we've said what needs said about Split, so without going into a line-by-line summary, Glass, worthwhile payoff? Successful? No?
Okay. Oh, man. I don't know how to start this. For one, I don't think there may be another movie after Glass.
Well, that was inherently spoilery.
No, because I can see why people thought it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
I personally liked it. I'm talking like, I don't know if people are gonna like it enough to see it more than what it did in the theater to, warrant another movie. That's
well, strangely, whether people like it or not isn't a big indicator of whether anything gets followed up, because that movie is still making mad money despite the reception.
Mm-hmm.
Venom made damn near $1 billion, even though people didn't actually like it for reasons I'll never understand how that happened. So
Fair enough.
The reception, frankly, has little to do with whether it gets a follow-up. Whether it gets a follow-up is just up to what Shyamalan was planning. And I believe he claims that originally these 3 movies were conceptualized as one until he realized it was just too much content.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. And the big thing, too, is I'm wondering if a lot of people didn't like it because they didn't understand that there was a first movie that wasn't split.
Well, no, that couldn't possibly be the case because I mean, that's half the intrigue. Frankly,
Right.
I don't even know that more people saw Split than saw Unbreakable. Like, they're both movies that the people that saw them loved them, but neither of them were huge, well-known financial successes.
Right. Now, keep in mind, I believe this movie is 15 years after Unbreakable.
Something like that. I'm not really sure.
Well, the reason I say that is because what's really interesting.
Are you talking timeline wise or release wise? Timeline, I think it's even further than that because I think Unbreakable was late 90s. I think it was pre-superhero boom.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still quite a while away. What I really enjoyed was the fact that in Unbreakable, Bruce Willis's character, David, had a son named Joe, and they have the same actor playing it in Glass.
Okay.
So like that huge time gap, it was really cool to see like the actual kid to the now grown up, you know?
Yeah, I didn't watch the trailer, so I don't know if that established it, but I would have never assumed that his son showed back up, let alone with the same actor, because movies just they don't usually go to that length to keep the same actor when it's a kid and you don't know what they're actually going to look like when they're old anyway.
Right. But I really adored that because I was like, oh shit, that's really cool, you know? Now there's a couple of different things. Like it's pretty directly after Split. One of the people from Split is in it. That's all I'll leave it at. But the movie kind of follows the same pattern as Unbreakable.
Okay.
Knowing that you watched Unbreakable, Dalton, you can probably see where I'm going, where it was build up.
Mm-hmm.
So
I gotcha.
Yeah, I think people were expecting more out of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now the reception of it really kind of frustrated me, but I really hope there's another one. You know, I'm just like you said, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean just because it got a bad review that it could be canned, you know. But I'm really intrigued to see if they're going to continue the story just because of all the reviews of the movie I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Now that being said, I absolutely loved James McAvoy in this movie. Okay, they kind of took a Marvel approach in a way, almost like with Guardians of the Galaxy, because like it's weird because where James McAvoy was kind of like the enigma and the horrific incident of Split, he was almost the funniest character in Glass. In fact, was the funniest character in Glass.
You lost me on your Guardians comparison. Are you just saying the movie's funnier than you anticipated?
Yes. Like, there's a lot of, like, quick little jokes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, his character, you know, even in Split, he's doing things that would be funny removed from context.
Yeah.
He has lines all over the place that, oh, that's hysterical if you weren't shitting your pants already when he said it. Right.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people.
I guess with that thriller element gone.
Yeah. It doesn't have the suspense that Split did, and I'm wondering if people were kind of hating it because it didn't. You know what I mean? But if you watch these movies in succession, which is something I've never done, by the way. I've never been like, oh, hey, Iron Man 3 is coming out. Better watch Iron Man 1 and 2 before I see it in the theaters. I've never done that. So watching these movies super closely related to another, I was like amped to watch this movie. It was phenomenal. I fucking loved it. I don't want to give too much away because it is still so recent. But if you've happened to see Unbreakable and Split, I recommend you go see Glass, because it's a fantastic bit of the story. Now,
well, I'll hopefully manage to see it in the next week, and hopefully I agree with you. We'll see.
There were some good funny moments that made me a little not like teary-eyed, but like felt emotional. But it's a very, very unique storytelling of any superhero vision I've ever seen. It's just phenomenal. And the better thing to do, especially before watching Glass, I recommend being more familiar with each individual character's identity. Not like splits different identities, but like Bruce Willis, James McAvoy, and Samuel L. Jackson's characters. Like, if you're familiar with them, a lot of these things won't be leaving you scratching your head, because that's the other thing too. Like, I know you and I, Dalton, frequently like kind of get disappointed when like animes have to explain stuff over and over because they think we'll forget. This movie doesn't do that.
Doesn't bother to catch you up.
It doesn't bother to explain things to you.
Well, thank God.
So I would go in it with a little bit of a refreshed memory of like Bruce Willis's character, especially because there was a lot of moments where I'm like, wait, why? Oh, never mind. No, it makes sense. You know what I mean? And it's just an all around good time, especially if you're into something that's not predicted, you know, like you can't necessarily predict everything that's going on, but then you're like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that, and still be satisfied with it. It's one of those.
Yeah. Well, that said, I think we've rambled about this trilogy of movies for long enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Granted, I don't know how we would be swift and quick about a whole trilogy, but
right. This almost became a spotlight.
But nonetheless, I guess we're endorsing these, or I guess officially the first two, unofficially Glass until I go see it, and we'll see if I agree, and I hope I do.
I think you really need to. And then next week you can tell everybody that you did, because you did.
Yes, absolutely. Now, that said, Josh, bring up something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the listeners are going to agree that I had the best insight on those movies there. I don't know about you guys, but I think I fucking nailed it.
Right?
You've done wonderful.
Yeah, right? Yeah, geez, like I don't even know what else to talk about.
Okay, well, in that case, if we are close to an hour, and I did not even realize it. So, Editor Dalton from the future here, that was close to an hour prior to editing. Man, I was about to bring up a random discussion question since we ran out of shows to talk about.
Sure, go ahead. We might as well.
Screw it. I'm going to do it anyway. And my random discussion question to fill up the rest of the episode this week is subs versus dubs. Go.
Were you drumming just now?
I was.
Okay. Oh man, that is a very good question. I think I kind of think it has to depend. You know, like I started watching like Attack on Titan subbed, and I tried watching it dubbed, and it didn't feel good to me. I mean, granted, I waited like another year and a half before I started watching it again, and now I watch it dubbed. But I do have to say that subbed is definitely like there's more impact with the character voice. Now, like
for that particular show, or are you talking in general?
At least for like that particular show, it's a case by case basis for me, because like I couldn't watch Dragon Ball anything in Japanese just because Goku's voice actor drives me fucking insane.
That is exactly why I stopped watching Dragon Ball Super, because when it was coming out, I tried watching the sub, and it's just Goku's voice is insufferable in the sub.
In fact, I don't know about you, Josh, but speaking of like Dragon Ball in Japanese, do you think that Piccolo's voice actor actually sounds like American Goku?
Wait, what?
What?
Yeah, if you listen to the Japanese voice actor for Piccolo, sometimes he actually sounds like the American voice actor for Goku.
Okay, it's been a couple years since I tried suffering through Super's subs, so maybe I'll go check that out and get back to you.
I don't know about Super's dub or sub version, because I've never watched it. In fact, I've been just patiently waiting for Funimation to drop this shit, even though we know it's all done. They
have been dubbing it. I don't think they're the full way through the series, but they've got a fair bit of it out, I think.
Well, guys, let's not accidentally turn it into a discussion about a particular show. Let's just say, as a rule of thumb, if you don't know yet which one's going to be better, what do you go for first?
Well, Dalton, real quick, shut up real quick. Josh, they're about to be on the Tournament of Power, and I'm done.
Okay. Good enough. Yeah, I mean, I think as a general rule, I will prefer subs. There are some shows where, like, there are some shows where you just have to watch the dub, and I'm thinking of like Cowboy Bebop, and that's basically it. I guess Dragon Ball Z. I think in general, Funimation does a better job dubbing shows than pretty much any other like dubbing company. The dub for My Hero Academia, though it's not the first one that I watched, I saw the movie dubbed in the theaters, and I've watched a few episodes of the anime dubbed, and the dub for My Hero Academia is fantastic. I could actually go probably either way moving forward. I'll still watch the subs because they're going to come out first, but
yeah, see, that's the big thing for me is if the anime is going to be like visually intense, where like you have to pay attention to what's going on the screen, I may just watch it dubbed to save the time.
I've never really noticed that I have a problem like reading the subs at the same time as watching the show. Obviously, if you want to like multitask, and a lot of times I'll watch something and play a game at the same time, and that's hard to do with subbed content. So if I'm if I want, like I rewatched Code Geass a few years back, and because I had watched it subbed once, I decided to just watch the dub to see how it compares. And
wait, so how does it compare? Because I just started Code Geass.
Are you watching it dubbed?
I am.
It's not bad. I guess that's not a glowing recommendation, but Code Geass is one of my favorite shows. The sub was fantastic. The voice work for the dub is pretty good. In most cases, yeah.
Okay. Well,
I think what is it, Johnny Young Bosch that does Lelouch? I think he does a really good job as Lelouch, and that's really important because Lelouch is, I mean, the main character isn't always the best character in your show, but Lelouch is the best character in Code Geass by far.
Sure. So you mentioned multitasking. I guess that's the thing for me is that I try to go sub as often as possible for authenticity, just because I feel like, you know, generally speaking, like the director was there giving the voice actors guidance, telling them exactly what their vision was. And for that reason, I try to stick that way when possible. But I am also a serial multitasker. Which is why Code Geass got started as a dub for me. But I might regret multitasking that show, man, because there is a lot happening.
Yeah, that's going to be hard to multitask for a first watch pretty quickly. A lot of stuff goes on in that show.
Yeah, I'm 3 or 4 episodes in and realizing not a good way to continue.
Not for your first watch, definitely.
Right. That said, again, I don't want to accidentally turn it into a discussion about a particular show or anything, but
I do have a question.
Recently, like, go ahead.
Well, go ahead and finish your thought, because it's a question spawning off of what you asked us.
Well, I was going to mention that recently, like, I played Catherine and I left it as a dub, honestly, just because I didn't think to check whether I could change the language settings. And the dub was so good that I couldn't honestly consider switching it. You know, maybe it was better as a sub, but it didn't occur to me to check first, and I stuck with it.
See, it's funny that you mentioned that, because in like video games with dual audio, I never even think about it. I just go with whatever is in English. But a lot of the times, especially with JRPGs nowadays, they'll release with English and Japanese voices subtitled, and you have the option of switching between them. I don't know why, but for video games, I just prefer everything to be in English. I don't even look at the subs. I'm literally just now realizing that I do that and wondering why it is.
Yeah, Catherine previously didn't provide the option before the Steam release. But that said, shortly before that, I played Yakuza, which has Yakuza 0, I should say, which has no English dub at all. And I was thrilled to be playing through that with the sub and feeling like I was getting the more authentic experience there. And I would have gladly set it that way if I had the choice. I don't know. It just feels like the right thing to do for me, provided, you know, it could just so happen that the Japanese dub is shit and it is what it is, but provided it's decent, I'm going to prefer it.
It's probably a lot harder to gauge quality when you don't understand the language they're speaking.
Well, that's fair too. And I guess that's kind of a hole in my authenticity argument too, because how authentic of an experience am I really getting if, like, when I'm letting their inflections affect my interpretation of their delivery, like, we don't 100% speak in the same way. I'm not necessarily interpreting that inflection the way they intended.
Right.
Or
That's
I'm
what I'm
not
getting
necessarily able to recognize, like, exactly which, for a given sentence, it can come out differently depending on which words you choose to emphasize. And I guess I'm also not getting, that's another part of the communication I guess I'm missing there.
For all the little intricacies with, delivery of your language are lost on somebody who doesn't understand the language that's being spoken in the first place. So it's probably very hard for you or I to tell whether or not, the delivery of a line is good in Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Unless it's Japanese Goku.
Well, yeah. That's just, yeah.
Right. Now the question was spawned from this was, I don't know about you guys, but I actually prefer when they do like theme songs to shows. I don't skip them because I like them.
Very rarely.
I tend to usually enjoy the original dubbed version of it. Like, for example, with Super, at least with like the first quote unquote season, there were two versions of the theme song. One was sung by a Japanese singer, and the other one was sung by an American singer. And I honestly enjoy the Japanese version of it. I don't know about you guys, but is that something that you think about too? Well,
for me, when it comes to music being modified, my authenticity argument very strongly sways towards the Japanese.
Yeah.
I cannot think of a single English redub of an anime opening theme that hasn't made me cringe with the force of 1,000 suns. So I'm actually just right now having like nightmare flashbacks to the old 4Kids opening for One Piece and anything else that they've done.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put me very, very strongly on Team Sub for openings.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also cases of the whole show's score getting replaced for no good reason. Like Dragon Ball Z. I'm not sure if it's the case for Dragon Ball as well or not, but Dragon Ball Z, our dub here has completely different scores.
I think the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Did that as well.
Right.
This is to the extent that like certain Blu-ray releases will come with multiple audio tracks, not just so you can have an English dub and a Japanese dub, but you also get a choice of English dub with the American score or English dub with the Japanese score.
It's interesting that you bring up Dragon Ball Z, because if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of plagiarism in the soundtracks for Dragon Ball Z. Like, I know in like the Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 game, there was major plagiarism that had to be changed with like an HD remake. But I can't remember. I know like Faulkner's score in Dragon Ball Z was super popular, but I can't remember if it was plagiarized.
Well, here's the thing, is that with Dragon Ball Z, I'm talking literally the entire score. Like,
no, I know.
Completely separate composers happening here. The whole thing was replaced. Like, I'm not talking one motif or one theme. I'm talking the whole music was replaced, which means since I've never watched that show subbed, I've never heard the music the way it was intended to be.
Right.
I've been given an inaccurate representation of what the creators intended, and that bothers me. Okay, not enough to suffer through Japanese Goku voice acting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do have to say, though, we did get a pretty sweet soundtrack no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a good score. Mm-hmm. It's just not
which still
not
brings
a faithful one.
That cultural change effect. Like, we don't know if the music was considered good by the original Japanese watchers. Same with the voice acting. We don't know if they thought it was good either, and that's maybe why it was changed. With like what Josh's argument was trying to say.
That's an interesting idea, but I would think it's more likely that it was changed because they expected that we wouldn't like it, and not because the original audience didn't like it.
Yeah, it's definitely probably more in line with what Dalton just said. I don't know. I think I think the localization process in general is just fascinating. And for a lot of things, especially a lot of the things that they changed back then, I'd love to, like, I don't know if you buy like DBZ on Blu-ray now, if they're going to have some special features where they talk about localizing or anything. But I'd love to hear stories from back when they were doing that. You know, just kind of talking about why they decided to go with certain directions, like with the music and everything else.
Yeah, why did you feel this wasn't, you know, the right thing for American audiences?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You'll get localization stories for like video games every now and then, but I haven't heard many from other mediums.
Yeah.
Yeah. That said, I did once watch the Digimon movie subbed with the original audio, and wow, the original score was bad, and I'm glad we ruined it with our own music. So consistency on that issue is not going to be my strong point, but I think that's a good place to close off.
Alrighty. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to yet another Geek Show. Be sure to check us out next week. And see you then, guys. Take care.